All right, on this episode, I interview Conor O'Brien. He is a friend of mine, local Massachusetts hunter. He had gone out to Illinois to do some guiding for 10 years and recently moved back. So we talk about kind of the differences in hunting strategy, deer size, all of that stuff between Illinois and then coming back to Massachusetts and figuring out these woods. A lot of good, local discussion on strategies, hunting local deer. I think you guys will really enjoy it. So we'll get into this podcast now with Conor O'Brien. All right, we got another episode of the Hunt Suburbia podcast, and I'm sitting here with my buddy Conor. What's going on, Conor?
Thanks for having me. Everything's going good. It's been a great season. Looking forward to catching up.
Killed a couple nice bucks.
It's always nice this time of year, at this point in the year, to have 2 tags punched for bucks. So
we were just texting the other day, and or maybe it was even today. Time is a vortex for me during deer season. But you were like, "There's been a lot of nice buckshot in Massachusetts this year that I've seen on that Bow Hunt Mass page, but only a couple that I would classify as giants." And I was sitting there thinking, yeah, well, when I'm talking about giants in Massachusetts, I'm thinking, anything that's mid 130s and higher is a giant. But you tell everybody about where you lived for the last 10 years. You grew up, in Massachusetts. You moved away to work for a couple different companies. You could talk about that a little bit, and then move back here. But you were spoiled for like 10 years seeing big bucks, right?
Yeah, let's pause there. That hurt. It hurt me to send that text because when I moved back a year and a half ago, I really got my eyes opened to what Massachusetts caliber bucks are.
Yeah.
And there are some giants here.
Yeah.
We're very lucky. We're not so far north where they're big woods, and we're not so far, south and populated. But what I meant in that text was when I really started digging in the Massachusetts archives of bucks and what hunt stock opened my eyes to of some really top level hunters throughout the state. Fast forward to the other day, I was scrolling on my wife's Instagram on Bow Hunt Mass, and it kind of surprised me. I said, wow, there's a lot of, nice bucks getting shot. But I think in years past, I remember getting blown away by saying, there's some true blue giants out here.
Yeah,
things from the Midwest that things that look like they're from the Midwest. So when I texted the other day, I said, there was a handful on Bow Hunt Mass. I was surprised. Maybe some people are keeping some giants, maybe a little quieter these days.
Yeah.
But when they post all those photos, I thought there'd be maybe more this, by this point in the season. So
yeah, you're right. There in years past, it does seem like there were a higher number of absolute slobs, 180s to 200-inch bucks. There's been some nice bucks this year. Jake Bennett killed two really nice bucks. But yeah. We haven't seen like a ton of slobs. And
statewide, that page covers a lot. But regardless, where I come from is Massachusetts, and I think I really started picking up hunting at like 15, 16. No social media. This is in the late or before 2010. So probably hunting 2008 was really like beginning. Just didn't know much. Didn't know the hunting industry. Just trying to go out and figure it out. My father didn't hunt deer. An uncle hunted deer, but he wasn't around. He lived in northern Mass. So I didn't really have too many mentors. So I didn't know what Massachusetts really had to offer. It's kind of funny. I would pick up magazines back then and look at all the giants in the Midwest and say, wow, it would be a dream to like get after these, but I'm stuck here.
Yeah.
Little did I know, they're here. You can do your due diligence and find mature bucks. So kind of always called myself a hunter, but didn't have a whole lot on the wall or anything to really prove that I was a hunter, because I think I shot a turkey when I was like 16, 17, but started working my butt off, met a guy. he had guided out west in the Midwest, Illinois. And I started talking to him. I said, what's it like out there? How'd you get the job? He stops me mid-sentence. He goes, "Are you interested? Do you want to go guide?" I said, "Oh, I would love to, but I haven't killed a deer yet. I don't know what I'm doing." He goes, "Buddy, there's kids out there driving Honda Civics with neck tattoos, and they don't know what they're doing either. If you go out and you want to have an opportunity to guide whitetails, I'll make a phone call."
It's a good place to learn too, probably.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was signing up for, so I made a phone call. Ended up getting my foot in the door, and the owners of the operation were the owners of Quiet Cat. So getting out there, seeing how the operation's done, blew my world open. Finally started seeing just how whitetails behave in farm country. They offered me a job to move out to Colorado at the end of the season. Jumped all over that. Got out to Colorado and did end up doing 6 years guiding while working for Quiet Cat.
Yeah, because Quiet Cat's headquartered out there, right? Or they were.
They just recently moved, but I was there in the heyday. It was 2016 to, I moved back, 2022 here? No, 2023. I just moved back in the summer of 2023.
Yeah, see, you're still in the hunting vortex too.
Yeah, they all get pretty wrapped up. But moving back, I had some experience guiding in the Midwest. Did some Western hunting, did some elk hunting, pronghorn hunting, mule deer hunting. But coming back is when my eyes got open to learning about what you do, what you offer for the hunting community here. And I got to be honest, I was a little burnt out on whitetails. Going after elk, going after mule deer, pronghorn.
Yep.
Dreaming about sheep and goat. I kind of got that Western hunting bug. So when I moved back, I didn't really know how I felt about whitetails anymore. Because I had guided them, I knew that I was still green behind the ears in relative terms of being young and not having that much time hunting them, but I was exposed for 3 straight months of living and breathing them. I just didn't know how I was going to adapt back into pure whitetail country. Yeah. Of course I could go out of state, go back out west, but I got a new baby boy, life's going fast. So I kind of revamped my whole idea of how to hunt, where I grew up. And I decided not to go back to any areas that I used to hunt when I was unsuccessful before I moved out. And I also didn't have Onyx when I lived here, when I was 24 in 2008 to 2014. So knowing town land, knowing state forests, and even knowing private land was very intimidating back then.
Yeah.
So when I moved back, I was able to really dive in to the maps. And what I think was really important was the relationships. Friends, parents, friends, people who knew my family. And one really key part was getting access, not to hunt their property, but just to park at it.
Yeah.
So if I could park at somebody's house in a neighborhood,
makes a big difference,
and get into, town land, state forest with the right wind access, that was huge for me. So everything kind of coming together, knowing what I did in the Midwest was a big adjustment because this isn't farm country. I needed to relearn feeding areas, bedding areas, travel corridors, and then of course, the pressure. Hunting private land in the Midwest, all you got to really worry about is the neighbors hunting trophy deer as well. Out here, you just got a lot of trail walkers, hikers, dog walkers, mountain bikers.
Yeah, not even hunting pressure, just overall pressure. Yeah.
And you coming from Vermont, I'm sure you kind of had big mountains and bigger woods up there. Coming here, you kind of had to probably adjust to playing the game of, is the stand going to work? It looks good in the summer, but on a nice fall day,
100%.
Who's going to be out here?
Yeah, going from Vermont to here, was it opened my eyes, but it was kind of the opposite of going from knowing whitetails in Illinois to Mass. You're seemingly coming back to a lower class whitetail. And I don't know, maybe the deer population is pretty comparable, or there's probably still less deer per square mile here than where you were hunting Illinois. But for me, it was like all I knew was hunting Vermont, and it was very low, and it was mountain country or hill country, and very little ag, and it was very low deer per square mile. We'd be lucky to see a couple of deer a season sometimes, and never any big bucks. It was all, if you look at the list on my camp wall, it's spike horns, 3-pointers, 4-pointers,
Yeah.
the majority of them. Since the antler point restriction, now that we're, get 6, 7, and 8-pointers every year. But when I moved here and I started when COVID hit, I started putting cameras out. I was like, well, let me see. Maybe I don't have to hunt Vermont all the time. Maybe I can hunt around the suburbs and closer to home. I got a family starting. I need to do that. So when COVID hit and I didn't have, job basically for like a year, all of our Spartan events got canceled. I put cameras out, and my first check on a camera, I was like, what? There was like
around this backyard.
There were like 4 or 5 bucks that were bigger than any buck I'd ever seen in Vermont.
Wow.
At my camp on like my first camera check. So I was like, well, this is pretty awesome. And that just got me the bug. But what you're saying about going from different deer behavior and territory, Vermont big woods, they're pressured too, but Vermont big woods deer to now hunting smaller plots of land, suburban country, the quality is higher, but it was relearning everything. And I didn't even know. I feel like I was kind of like what you were before you moved out to Illinois, where you hunted, and I spent a lot of time. I mean, I hunted since I was 8 years old in Vermont at my deer camp, and I killed one when I was 11, and then I killed one every 2 or 3 years out there. But I had no strategy to it. I would walk out in the morning. I never did any scouting. I would just walk out. I got to know the woods. I got to know places that I thought were good funnels to sit. And I was just randomly picking places in the morning. And once every 3 years, I'd get lucky and I'd kill a deer. But I didn't have any strategy. I was very green. I realized that I didn't know hardly anything about deer hunting until I really got that bug in 2019 around here, that I started to learn. And then I just dove headfirst into it.
Sometimes you got to do that because, as you know, you just got to keep developing spots and shifting with, hunting pressure, but also, land changes, ownership changes.
Yep. Food sources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one thing I miss a lot is the open landscape and glassing. In the Midwest, you could get a lot done from your driver's seat on a cut cornfield.
Yep.
Summertime in the beans, and that would be a great inventory scouting opportunity.
And it's very fun to drive around in glass. That's one of my favorite things in the world.
Oh man, you never know what you're going to see, and really good chances are you're going to see some true, bomber bucks, and that was really hard for me to get back here and say, I went for a drive with you last summer. You opened my eyes to going out and looking for deer, and I said, "Wow."
I think that was one of the first times we met. I was like, "Let's go on a glassing drive," and you're like, "I love glassing." Yeah,
and I could really understand how the homework you've put in. You went and found these deer in landscape like this, where all I was used to is gridlock roads. Go down, take a left, take a right, and you're looking
unlimited farms,
360 degrees. You could see deer. So finding ways to hunt mass for me has totally been forgetting about crops, and finding security, finding bedding areas. But hardwood ridges are hardwood ridges. We had those out in Illinois, so I had a really good idea of how to tackle those. Those have been successful for me, but swamps, there's not a ton of swamps out there. They have, draws and, water sources, but here in Mass, swamps are pretty key. I think being able to leverage a swamp with big bucks and acorns and give yourself an opportunity to set up in a way that, like you said, there's no actual funnel there, but they're creatures of habit and path of least resistance. This year was tough for me. It was very dry. There's a lot of deer deeper in the swamps, and my cameras prove that. I told you I didn't have a lot of mature deer on camera because last year I did, and it was a pretty wet year. This year, not so much.
Yep.
And I think they just were not coming up to where they usually were because they were more comfortable where they could be, and that was a learning lesson.
Yeah. Now you file that in the back of your mind, and now you know next year the next time we have a dry year. You've been through a dry year here now, and now you'll be able to know that camera placement strategy and all that going into that next year. That I haven't. I think that's the first real dry year that I've had since I've been hunting here too. And I saw the same thing. I didn't have a lot of mature bucks early on, but then I did have a camera on a swamp exit that was the most consistent activity I ever saw for deer are going back into the swamp in the morning and they're coming out in the evening. I had one camera where it was sometimes you'll have a camera on a swamp entrance exit, trail going in, and they'll be doing the opposite of what you expect sometimes. Like they're going in at night and they're coming out in the morning, just sometimes how they're moving. But this year it was very, very, very consistent. Every deer heading into the swamp, like clockwork, it was early in the morning. It was 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 a.m. And coming out in the evening, they were coming out every time. Like I looked at the pictures, the thumbnails, and just it was like you zoom out and you're like, oh, deer's heading that way. I know exactly. Let's go see what the time was. And it was every single time. But it's not always like that.
You really got to wonder if there's a browse or feeding source in there that lets them stay there all day, even if it starts to get cold. But acorns are still king. Definitely got both my bucks this year, right in the oaks. And I used the rut. I felt like both bucks were with does on does, but coming from Illinois, it's always a dream of everybody to kill a mature buck early season while he's not too interested in following does. And that's something I think hunters who consistently get the job every year get it done. You see them tagging out before Halloween.
Yeah.
And it's not everyone every year, but I can really give props to the guys who can pattern a mature deer early, get them alone, and get them off guard while they're probably in some of their most alert stages.
Yeah, I still haven't been able to really ever pattern a specific buck. I just haven't been able to do that. But I like to spread my cameras and my scouting very thin. I do a very wide net. If I put all my resources and time into a smaller spot, I could probably do it. But I like to have 10 or 15 bucks over 125 inches that I know exist and I can bounce around to places. The most patterned buck I ever had on camera was that big one earlier this year, Spooky. Yeah. Like that one was the buck that I had the most and was starting to actually narrow. Like I had him pretty narrowed down, but every other deer, like this one was the first week of the season. He was just bedding to food. That one, he was November. He was rut, but I've never had anything patterned. My strategy's been going to where I have the highest concentration of mature bucks. If I have 3 or 4 shooters in one area that I would like, and they're there pretty consistently, that's where I go.
You gotta give yourself a chance to see them on the hoof and make a judgment call whether they're gonna take an arrow or not. But for public land, anything can happen. I think private land for us in Illinois, you could really just sit back on your haunches and wait for the right wind and try to get an idea of what kind of cycle they're on. Day to day, I think they do things different.
Yep.
But there's always that sort of consistent scrape cycle or something that tells you they're hitting the scrape every 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, they're on some sort of circuit or some sort of loop, and guessing, sure, but you gotta take your best information and get in there and find a way to protect your stand and not give them, you know, any heads up that you're getting after them, because once the rut kicks off, you know, you don't know if they're going to be there or not. And there's so many does in the Midwest, and I found out there's a lot of does here.
Yeah.
So wherever they decide to go, you know, the week before Halloween or right about there, you're hunting pinch points,
Yeah.
finding ways to get on your best odds. Like you said, most deer in concentrated area is going to be your best bet almost every time.
Like what you were saying, like it's not the funnels. They're not so obvious. Like they're micro funnels is what I've been finding.
Yeah.
It's like they won't even show up on topo maps.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was hunting a creek and it had a big bend. Actually, it wasn't a very big bend. It just had a horseshoe in it. And when I went to go look at it, because I saw it when I took the leaf off image on Onyx, it wasn't a funnel, but you know what? It gave them some sort of like feature to cross at, and it had crossing every which way.
Even a visual feature, they see it, they're like, "Oh, that's where I cross all the time."
Yeah, it was a straight creek on both sides, but for some reason, right where it horseshoed,
Yep.
had the most activity, and that proved very successful. There's a lot of deer there. I saw a lot of deer there this year.
Yep. One of my favorite stands where I'm gonna go hunt tomorrow is I've only been figuring that piece of woods out the last 3 years I've been hunting it. And this year I finally like figured out the optimal place for the stand there. And it was after years of observation, like a lot of sits, being just watching so many deer filter through it. And it's a place where I don't have a lot of options.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
You sent me some photos. You know, we share some photos. You hunt a lot amongst rocks.
Yeah.
I killed my big buck in rocks on rocks on rocks this year. I don't think it bothers them one bit to move through rocks.
This place that I'm going tomorrow, this micro funnel.
Slabs.
This micro funnel is around a giant patch of boulders.
Yeah.
And the last time I sat there, I haven't sat there at all during gun season. I know it's a great gun spot.
Yeah.
And I have a good opportunity to kill something there tomorrow. But I was years of observing. I was back like 40 or 50 yards from where my current stand placement is now. And it was a good spot. I had deer that would cross there, and I had opportunities. I could see a long ways there, and there were some other micro funnels there. But so many times I saw, more often than not, instead of using the funnels right around my stand, there was one out in front of me that was like where they were walking was 70 yards away. I just didn't have a chance, but I saw them use that a lot. So I finally moved up to that, and then there's a pile of boulders there. There's a little break in a stone wall. They cross, and they stay on the high side of the pile of boulders and kind of go down this little ramp. And the last time I sat there, at around last light, these 4 does came through, and the smallest one, a fawn, was just climbing up those boulders.
Yeah.
And she was eating acorns that got down in crevices and stuff. And she literally stood like on the top of the pile, like you would see.
Billy goat.
Yeah, like you would see a goat do. And so of course, yeah, they just they don't mind it.
I always kind of shied away from them. I thought, you know, between their hooves or, you know, the insecurity of being able to get out of there fast or something. But what I've been seeing the last 2 seasons of hunting back in Mass here, there's no rocks in Illinois.
Yeah.
The farmers got rid of all of them.
Yeah.
One time one of the head guides, he's like, somebody said something. He's like, there's no rocks here. I was like, what? I started thinking, no rock walls.
Yeah.
It's all just barbed wire fencing. They cleared them out of all the fields. I don't know where all the rocks went. Anyways, here in Mass, it's just, there's rocks everywhere. They're all kind of poking up. And I used to just think that they were a hazard to the deer, break their leg, the hooves are too loud, and they just get all cranky. But the last 2 years, I started realizing that my cameras and what I was observing while hunting is they almost have security in the rocks. And yes, they'll pick their way through them. But acorns get piled up in there. They're like little troughs. They can go to one spot and eat for a long time without having to scour a whole hillside. So yeah, I thought the rocks was something that clicked for me.
Yeah.
Recently is it obviously they can't be cliffs, but if you know Massachusetts, you'll get in these just like rock fields.
Yeah.
And you'll see on I took my ground blind out today after this rain and in the cold. I actually was able to tell where the deer were walking in the rocks because of the deep impressions in the leaves. And I was like, man, they're still in here. And it's because the acorns, I think, just get piled up in concentration. They're able to just save energy, forage on the acorns in specific spots because the oaks and the rocks are all together.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I look at rock piles as more of a micro funnel that they're not going to go right through it. They might stop in there to eat, but it forces them to, at least in this little micro funnel, there's a perfect stone wall break.
Yeah.
And then they can't go down. They could, but it just makes sense for them to keep going straight where that break is. And then there's a nice, perfect little ramp. It's just a gradual slope down into some thick stuff, into some jack pines. And they're only in the open there for a little bit, and they go right to those little pines to have some cover as they're walking. But they always stop and they feed there. And I actually watched a doe bed on those rocks too one evening when I had 12 does in front of me at once, and one buck pushing a few of them around every once in a while. But there were 12 does in front of me, and I was watching them at last light, and one of them, I was like, she just wasn't moving for a while. I'm like, what is she doing over there? And I put the binoculars up, and she was just bedded. She wasn't going to be there all night, but she just laid down.
Yeah, good vantage spot.
On the rocks.
Had a good wind at her, good wind direction for her, I'm sure. But I love watching does. I think I sometimes forget how important it is to just monitor and inventory your does.
Yes. That's one of the main reasons I'm hunting this piece is because the first year I hunted there, there were some good buck sign and stuff, and there were some acorns that year. That's what brought me there originally. But after observing that first year in December, I saw a group of 10 does together, and I was like, oh, and I was able to see where they were bedding a lot. They were bedding within eyesight of me.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, well, there's a big doe group, and here's where I know they like to bed a lot. And so that was just a piece of the puzzle. And I've been hunting the last 3 years because of that doe group. And this year, I realized there's 20 in there. I probably got to shoot a couple of them. There's 20 does in there. And because my buddy saw 20 in a group while hunting with me in there.
Yeah.
So,
when you see that, it's the real deal. So,
but it's a great rut spot because of that.
I was a second-year guide out in Illinois, and we pulled a camera. I'm sure it was on a run or a scrape, or it was on a run because I remember seeing them all. I can remember the pictures. It was all broadside. They weren't at a scrape. So I get the camera, and all the guides. It was pretty important that we all sat down and looked at cameras together. And I know why now, because you get sick, you're not able to do your client, whatever reason. The other guides need to be able to take your clients and know your farm. So if I know where mature bucks are on your farm and you know where they are on my farm, we're all just one big team. I knew other operations where guides were responsible for their own stands, their own clients, and it was very separate. It was one outfitter, but like each guide was that was their siloed farm.
Yeah,
it was their tips, it was their clients. It was either they're either hero or zero at the end of the season. How many bucks were killed off your property? Where I guided, it was one big operation. We all tried to really know each other's pieces and share. So me and this other young guide, we get this card, and the head guide wasn't around. So we throw this card in the computer, and I start clicking, and I'm just seeing does, and I'm just looking for big bucks. It was October, I was second year. I was really anxious to find a big buck, so I'm breezing through. Lo and behold, the head guide walks in. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" I was like, "Oh, I just pulled a card from the camp farm." He's like, "We look at cards together." I was like, I know. He's like, "No, you got to understand. Like, I need to understand what's going on in everybody's farms. It's like I'm kind of responsible." So I was breezing through the does, and he sat me down. And he's like, "Connor, the most important thing right now is to understand where these doe groups are. These doe groups are the key to understanding where these bucks will be in a couple weeks." And it clicked for me. It clicked because I was just tunnel vision on looking at big racks and seeing who was in the area.
Yeah.
And when I finally sat down and realized that as a guide's job, or any hunter, you really got to figure out why your doe groups are there. And when those bucks start checking in on them, which way the bucks are going to really want to hang. Downwind, downwind of those does bedding area, feeding area, which way they're going to probably come from. And if they don't come from that way, which way are they going to circle around and just do their buck things. So that was an important lesson. I really started paying attention to that. And when you start really watching the does, I really liked at the end of October when you started seeing single fawns and single mature does. Because when that doe starts kicking that fawn off and they're all alone, that doe's getting ready to come into heat. She doesn't want competition.
Yeah.
She doesn't want her fawn too close to her during breeding season in case, that buck breeds the doe, or, I think it's just a natural thing where they just want to kind of make some room for each other, and the does, separate. And then button bucks were always with the does almost year round, except October, November, which I felt like I was told and I was learned that, the does start really kicking the button bucks out around the rut too, because they don't want those button bucks interbreeding with their sisters, cousins, themselves. Not that a button buck will probably mount a mature doe. I don't know. I'm sure it's happened, but when you start seeing these small groups of, not big bucks splitting up and behaving, on camera and with your eyes in the cornfields and stuff, it's go time. You're going to start getting ready for the rut, and it's obvious. You look at the calendar, but I love looking at the dynamics of the herd and finding out which farm is starting to heat up and which one still has those fawns attached to the hip of the does, and could be a matter of days, but it's an important lesson that I learned out there.
What do you want from your trail cameras? I know what I want. You basically just want to make sure that if a buck walks in front of it, the camera is capturing it, plain and simple, right? And with cell cameras, you want to make sure that after it captures it, it's getting sent to you and it's not getting hung up somewhere, and you don't have to worry about, oh, did you format the SD card the right way, or did you use the right SIM card with the right cellular network, or what did you do that is making this image get caught up? With Moultrie Mobile, you don't have to worry about that. I've been using Moultrie Mobile cell cams for 5 years now. The ones that I bought 5 years ago are still working. They're outdated now, but they're still working. But this year I'm running 20 Moultrie Edge 2 Pro cell cams, and I know when I put that into a tree, it is giving me the confidence that it's working. And there's brands out there where you just don't know, and you don't have the confidence when it's up in a tree, and then you have to talk to customer service, and you have to go through a whole line of troubleshooting items. With the Moultrie mobile cameras, they make it super simple. They have an auto connect feature, which will find the strongest cell signal around from the 4 major networks and automatically connect to that, so you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to install a SIM card. You don't have to bring an SD card and format it. Everything is built into the camera. The technology is all built into it, and that leads to a reliable camera that I can be confident in. And if you guys are looking for the right cell cam, if you already run cell cameras, you run different brands, I recommend getting a couple of these Moultrie Edge 2 Pros or any of the Edge 2 cell cams in that series, and just give them a shot. Run them against the other cameras that you have, and you'll be happy with the results. So go check them out. Don't just capture images, gather intelligence with the Moultrie Mobile Edge 2 camera series paired with the super simple and easy to use Moultrie Mobile app. You can learn more at moultrieproducts.com.
Yeah, and this time of year too, it's pretty cool because now I'm starting to see more following and chasing again after the last couple of weeks. It's been pretty non-existent. But I'm starting to see. That's why I'm going into this spot tomorrow, because the last few days I've had new bucks coming in too that I've never saw the entire year, which seems to happen this time of year. Something you're going to get a roamer because most of the does have been bred. They're looking for the late ones now, and so you're seeing new mature bucks that I've never seen, and that happens every year around this time. And I just got a new one yesterday, over in my Big Woods piece. And I was like, what buck is that? I'd never seen him. I couldn't tell if it was a Big Ten. He had kind of some broken beams and stuff. And then in the spot I'm going tomorrow, some new bucks that haven't really been around. There was a nice 8 that I'd never seen that showed up 3 or 4 days ago in there, and he was after a doe. But it's a really cool time, especially if you know where there's big doe groups. Because
what's your thoughts on second rut?
In terms of what?
Timing wise, I mean, the magic days of November. Do you think that like 30 days later, any doe that wasn't bred and the older class of fawns are all going to come into heat?
I do. I think it's about 30 days. That's what I've seen the last couple of years, just with activity, observation, and cameras. So right now it's like November 13th because it's December 13th. Tomorrow's the 14th. I think it's going to start picking back up.
Okay.
For the next 8 days to 10 days, But bucks are going to have to travel farther to find the straggler ones. I think majority of the does get bred in that first rut.
Yeah.
But I think 25% of them probably haven't been bred now.
Yeah, and
so if you got a big doe group, like 20 does, there might be 5 in heat in there right now.
Sure.
And my cameras have been showing that. I'll show you some stuff after the podcast, but I'd love to. I love seeing it. I haven't hunted much during gun season. And today was a nice day to go hunting, but I didn't. I went, I worked, and I kind of I'm starting to get towards the end of. I've been hunting for a long time this year. I've been hitting it hard the whole year.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little tiny bit burned out. I'm looking forward to shed season, going to look for some sheds, and I'm just getting back into the hunt stock grind mode where I'm going to be working a lot of hours. But tomorrow's the last day of gun season. I want to be out for it. And my cameras are showing in this particular spot anyway that there's activity picking up. So I'm pretty excited about tomorrow.
It's a pretty special time of year. I mean, even out in the Midwest, big bucks still get hammered this time of year. But I think in mass, without you glassing, visuals, getting inventory of who's coming out to cornfields and food plots.
Yeah,
cameras are super important. And what do you think? What do you think these days when there's so many more archery hunters out there? I know it's not the Midwest, and I know people aren't, hammering trophy deer and being very selective, but as far as either broken up tines and mature deer, I think the big boys are on their feet from November 9th to Christmas. I just don't think they have an off switch. I think they're programmed to go, go, go. And for hunters to be able to, really dedicate their time, you can do it all through October, November, and December. But if you had to choose, I would almost put this time frame right here is maybe like
Your second favorite
my
week.
second favorite. Yeah, October has never been great for me. I hear it a lot, between social media and other hunters. Like I said earlier, it takes a lot of dedication to get out there and get the job done in October. But I think right now with either the cold weather and if you get lucky enough for snow, just putting in your time with the leaves off, and the big boys, just like I said, no off switch, I think it'll pay off because they're out there. But back to what I said, the archery, is your inventory down? I mean, there's going to be less bucks out there because a lot have been shot this year.
There's less
and
bucks.
B, what times do you hunt? I think, on cold days, I shot mine last week at 10 in the morning. So if you're out there at daybreak, good on you. But I still think that rut theory of sitting, from 10 to 2 is still very valuable right now.
Oh yeah. I mean, tomorrow I'm only hunting till noon. But I think a lot of people are saying, go back to hunting evenings. Go back to like evenings because bucks are going more from bedding to feed again, and they're less focused. But it's totally reliant on the deer population and your bucks and does in the area. I know this area has a bunch of does. I know some of them are in heat. I'm seeing it on the cameras. I think it's going to be just like as if I was hunting mid-November. So I'd like to do an all-day sit if I could. But the plan right now is to hunt till noon. But one of the things I was going to say is like the biggest bucks I've had on camera, except for Spooky, but all the other the biggest ones, they're all still alive.
Nice.
And what I noticed in this really big patch of woods that I've been hunting, it's a patch that gets pushed a lot during gun season. It's
Right.
drive after drive after drive. That big one has not been over in the area where he was all of October and most of November. He didn't go very far. He was always consistently on camera there. Then he was off camera when gun season started. And I did a big loop there the other day, still hunting, and I checked cameras I have on all the way on the other side. And he was over there during that gun season. I think he just got pushed out of his normal area. He just got forced out of there by drives, and he's been over there, stayed over there for a few weeks. But he was the last picture I have on him on one of my cell cams a couple nights ago. He was on his way back. He still wasn't back in that core area, but he was on his way back there. So that piece of woods, I'm kind of not. I think the deer have been moved around and pushed and driven so much there that they're just acting a lot different. Is why I'm not. I kind of switched from. I've been hunting over there quite a bit, and during gun season, I've been going there. I can stretch my legs a little bit. I can, I saw bucks from my saddle. I was in a great funnel there. I thought maybe somebody would push something to me, but I spent quite a bit of time there. But the big bucks were dispersed in areas where now it's just a crapshoot. I'm waiting for that really big one to get back into that core area, which I think might happen next week. This considerably goes down after shotgun season.
Yeah.
The amount of muzzleloader hunters, so he might. But for now, this place I'm going tomorrow is not a place where it doesn't get driven. As far as I've known, it's not
What do you
tons
think
of
about
hunting pressure.
deer drives? Did you do them in Vermont? Have you done any in Mass?
No, I think I'm not against them at all. I wouldn't mind going out and doing a couple. I think it's a lot of strategy involved in it. Sounds fun, camaraderie wise, it would be awesome.
Yeah.
I like doing change of pace stuff. I just think it's something that you have to learn about as a hunter, like how that changes the deer behavior in each patch of woods and strategize around that if you're not going to do a drive.
Yeah.
But that big patch that was driven over and over, I'm going to let it settle down now until that big one comes back into my area. And if I still have a buck tag, then I'll go hunt them again then. And I'm going to focus again. This place that I'm going tomorrow is 20 does. Some of them are in heat right now. I've been seeing new bucks coming in, and it's not an area that gets a lot of drive pressure. And part of that too is because it abuts places that you can't hunt.
Yep.
There's big patches of area that you're not allowed to hunt, so that doesn't get driven. So I think that patch of woods just behaves much differently than that one that gets driven. So you're going to see more of second rut there than those other areas because the bucks are all pushed around everywhere. I don't know what the second rut looks like over there.
That's a great point. I think smaller parcels is really probably fun to hunt right now.
Yeah.
They act a little bit more in your favor. Those big woods, man, I got to admit too. I haven't ventured into them quite as much since I've been home because I feel like a big woods back here in the Northeast is very intimidating, and you could spend a few days in there without seeing a deer, but you could also have some great hunts in there. Big deer grow there, big deer hide in there. But these smaller parcels give me a little bit more comfort because
less pressure.
If anybody's going to hunt them, they're probably going to stay and hunt them, and it's not worth somebody's time to get a group of guys to push something small enough. But finding ways to get into the big woods and put a single stand there or saddle is like the homework. And
that's why I like going when I'm on the ground. I go and I still hunt most of the time in the bigger pieces.
Yeah. The summertime is great. You got to get in there after the season, where the season's over. You have nothing to really lose. Your weapons are away, and just walk the hell out of it and learn it with the leaves off, and learn where scrapes have developed. Because when I go into places in the summer, again, very intimidating, very frustrating, because you're trying to really dissect it when everything's grown back in. So I think scouting wise, January here is going to be my mission
100%
to get back out. And I know that's why you shed hunt. Shed hunting's huge. For me, it's going to be trying to get a bigger idea of big woods, deer, comfort, security, food sources, all that, and maybe do some coyote hunting.
Well, I was just talking to John Eberhard today because we're talking about getting him out to hunt stock, and we had like a 40-minute conversation. We were talking about possible seminar slots and what he would talk about. And he says he has a really good seminar. He talks about how important it is to scout January, February, March, scouting in the spring while the leaves are still off. The sign looks the same as it does in the rut. Cover looks the same, all of those things. And he's just like, I don't even touch the woods in the summertime.
Yeah.
It's useless to do that.
I feel like it is.
So
too. Set up your stands, trim your lanes, but don't try to find your new spots in the summer.
Yeah.
That was tough.
It's fun to get pictures of deer in the summer and videos. I love doing that, getting velvet and seeing them grow.
But have that homework done.
Yeah, have all the other stuff
February.
done, and have that just be like that's a fun, maybe put some mineral out if you do that, which I didn't do it last year. I was just lazy or didn't have the time or whatever. Yeah. But I do enjoy doing that and seeing the deer come up and grow up in the summer. But the other thing about the big woods that you were talking about, like, and when I'm saying sometimes I'll hunt a big patch that's 20,000 acres, but this one that I'm talking about where this buck is that gets pushed, it's like a 1,200 acre patch of woods. Yep. And, it's bigger than what I'm normally hunting. Like this place I'm going tomorrow is nowhere near that. But when I attack,
well, it is, but what you can hunt is
Well, when I attack that 1,200 acre patch, what I've been doing is just honing in on this corner. There's a corner of it that, if I mapped it out, it's probably 150 acres of it. But that's all I focused on this spring and summer and fall. When I was in that area, it was just, let me spend some more time over here in this little corner. And and really the reason was because there was a big 10-pointer in there that I had on camera in November and December, late season last year. And he shed. I had a video of a shed hunter going by holding his sheds in his hand, so I knew he survived. And I was like, all right, I really want to find that deer this year. I haven't found him. He hasn't showed back up on cameras at all. But that's what drove me to like focus all in that area, was that one buck. And it's awesome. Now I've honed in on that corner. I've got great intel there now. I've got a couple of great stand locations. I learned a ton about that corner, and it's so much easier to tackle. I think even Hal will talk about it, tracking and stuff. Like
just shrinking your focus to
focus on the 10% where the deer are, and not the 90% of the woods where they're not. Focus on the 10%. But I'm just kind of taking a different approach to that, where I'm just kind of break that giant patch into 20% of the whole patch of it and focus my cameras there. And then throughout that, I'll learn where they spend 90% of their time in that smaller patch. And that's better for a bow hunter or somebody looking to put a stand up.
Let's talk about access. I get pretty buggered myself when the wind is shifted, or I'm walking in with the wind either at my back or not in ideal position. So the past 2 seasons, I've really opted to hunting, closer to the road, closer to houses. Not to mean like I'm up against houses. I just mean I'm not walking deep enough.
You're trying to walk less steps.
Yeah, not because I'm necessarily lazy, which I am, but I've found that, like you said,
you ride your quiet cat in 500 feet behind a house.
There's still a ton of deer sign, and the cameras tell me that I can really have entertaining hunts without going deep. But I did go deep once this year and had a pretty decent hunt. I wanted to get in early. It didn't I know you always want the wind, in your favor for where you think the deer are going to come, but when you're so deep, does it actually matter, or do you then just say, okay, this is where the deer are coming from, I'm just going to move back and keep all of that in front of me? Because my strategy when I'm hunting smaller parcels is I'm going to come in with the wind in my face and leave the road to my back or that house to my back. If they get behind me, they win that day. But for the most part, I always want to give myself the whole woods to play out in front of me and give me an easy out on, I don't want to blow any deer on the way out. So when you're in big woods, again, I ask, like, does it really matter what the wind direction is? Because you could always just keep moving forward or stop early to give yourself that funnel, give yourself that area that you want to hunt. But you've also, made a little bit of an impact on the way in, and you still blowing your wind cone hundreds and hundreds of yards behind you, but you're trying to focus on this corner you're talking about. So getting over like the idea that,
I think if you're stand hunting, it definitely 100% still matters. But what I've been trying to do this year, when I'm going into a deeper patch of woods, most of these places that I'm hunting still have a pretty vast trail system, and they still have recreators, and the deer cross those trails. And that swamp spot I was talking about earlier, where it was like clockwork, they were going in the morning and coming out at night. There's a main trail that is like, I don't know, 150 or 200 yards off the edge of the swamp, and they're coming out of this, and it goes parallel to the swamp, and they come out of it and they cross it all the time to get up into the hardwoods. And for a fact, every day they're smelling humans on that trail every day. So I always try to get in, even if it's a much longer walk as far as I can on the main trail, and then plan that shorter egress up to my stand location from that trail. And I always go, that trail runs east-west. The swamp is like here, it goes east-west, and you come in from way over here and does this loop and goes down here. Stand might be up here in the hardwoods, and instead of going, cutting right here and just going in, the wind's coming this way most of the time. So I'm like, no, I got to leave that version. I'll keep my scent on that trail, come all the way down here.
Yep.
And then the wind's coming down this way. I'm going all the way down here further and then cutting back up right with the wind to my stand. I try to do that every time.
It's okay that your scent is on the main trail.
for sure.
that doesn't hurt you
Yep.
to the extent as your scent on, your pants brushing up against brush and your scent off trail. I think that's when they get a little bit more
Yep.
cagey. But
Yep.
yeah, I know what you mean there. You can certainly make big woods work in your favor if you get those trail systems and, like you said, leave like this knob or like this corner where they cut through virgin, even though it would be quicker to get there.
Yep.
Obviously, do it. So I knew it was a really nice Saturday at the beginning of November. I used my Quiet Cat and I said, this hunt is only going to be 2.5 hours. Even though I wanted to sit all day because it was going to be, just a beautiful spot, beautiful, comfortable, upper 30s day.
Was the wind switching?
No, I just knew that with the trail systems in this public piece, no matter where I really dropped my pin,
yeah,
there was going to be a trail within 100 yards or so. But where I wanted to be wasn't far from a trail, and I used my bike to get there, and I limited how much off trail I walked. But I still had a good wind. If they were going to cut my trail, I could maybe shoot them before.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like clockwork. 9:15, first trail walker comes through, fluorescent orange, whatever. Say 25 minutes later, a second, trail runner comes through. And I kind of just chuckled. I was like, you know what? I got in early. I got set up. I gave myself the amount of time that deer should be moving this time of year. But, I packed up and left, 10:30 because, like I said, it was a nice day. People were using the trails in that big chunk of woods. I needed to get deep early and give myself a chance because I was going to have less time if I was closer to the road. So when I look at a big chunk, it's important for me to get deep because you got to think about weekend, recreational.
How long it's going to take those guys to get deep too. Yeah.
Yeah. So on a bike, it wasn't bad for me. For them, they probably had started hiking at some point in the morning, but finding ways to use that in your advantage of knowing maybe when people are, and I wasn't trying to like use them as a pusher or get the deer up and moving, but
but they can.
Yeah. But I just wanted the virgin woods to myself for the first 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that's for some people listening, it might make sense. For other, they don't want to go anywhere where people are gonna mountain bike and hike and walk their dogs. But it's just kind of where we're at.
Another thing with access too that I've been noticing, and I've been doing a lot in this one particular spot in that bigger patch where I'm trying to hone in on that corner. I found this area just ripped up with rubs and scrapes on a hillside, not the top of the hill, kind of halfway up it. And there's a bunch of micro funnels in there that come together. And I found that on a day when I was still hunting. It was like 30-mile-an-hour winds, 35. I was in my saddle for the morning in a different spot. And I was like, well, I'm going to get down and do some still hunting and use this to go and do a big loop and check my cameras in that big piece. A couple of them are not in that little 200 acres. They're on the other side. I was like, I'm going to just walk around with the bow. And I hadn't ever gone over to this particular ridge side that I walked that day. I just hadn't been down that far yet. But I was still hunting down through there, got up over a knob, and I saw this beautiful 9-pointer 45 yards away, and he was just like feeding on his feet, kind of walking towards me. And I was like, oh, this is going to line up perfect. And I didn't end up...
Bow in your hand?
Yeah, bow in my hand. I crouched down when I saw him next to I always try to stop next to a tree if you're going to. Like I saw him, but I was in the open, and I took the next few steps to get next to some tree cover because you have a better chance then. And I knelt down. He never saw me do that. He was actually about to walk into a 30-yard lane. His head poked into it. Head went down. He was feeding. He turned around, went the other way, started walking. I got up. He couldn't hear anything. It was so windy. I got up. I drew full draw, and I just walked with him. He was walking away from me. He couldn't see me. I was just walking step in step with him and trying to keep that 30-yard buffer so I knew that he was 30 yards away because I wasn't going to have time to range find. I was at full draw. I was just trying to, all right, I'm within about 30 and to keep pace with him. and maybe he would open up and I'd get a shot somewhere. It didn't end up working. He stopped and did hear something of me, whipped his head around, and he was gone. But after that happened, I was like, what is this buck doing here? And I started looking around that area more once he was gone. I just found a scrape there, found a scrape here. It's like a whole rub line going down. I was like, man, this is a great little funnel area. There's some great funnels here, and there's a lot of activity. So I started honing in on that. The only problem is getting in to that spot where the tree that I have my saddle sticks, everything set up in right now is it was great for bow because I was overlooking this trail, this super hard deer trail that had a bunch of scrapes on it. That's a 25-yard shot down here. So I had to set up for bow. I could move it up this. There's a draw that goes up from there, but that's the way that I walk in. So during bow season, I was leaving my scent there, but expecting all that activity on that lower trail behind me. But knowing that funnel I walked in on too, they could, they could easily come down that, but my wind's going up that way most of the time, the way the prevailing wind is. So I was already kind of giving that up. But when I sit in that spot, I still make sure when I come down there now, I've honed in the way that I access it. There's an easier way, which I was coming before, but that would allow the deer. There's another trail up there that crosses that, and there's scrapes on that, which I've now found, and a nice signpost rub. So there's a trail above and below me where my stand is. The trail above me is like 55 or 60 yards away. But I was coming around another way, kind of walking in on that trail that they're using a lot. It's not marked. It's not like a heavily used human trail. You can tell it was some sort of a human trail at some point, but it's not on maps or anything. But the deer are using that a lot. So now I stopped using that trail because if I'm in that tree, a deer could pick up my scent from out of sight of me. I don't want them to do that. No. So I figured out how to come in. I come through some thick shit, basically straight onto that draw. And the point where I cross that high trail is a point where I can see and shoot easily with my gun. So if they're on that trail coming from either way, the point that they cross my footprint is a place that I can shoot them. And I try to do that every time that I'm accessing a spot, whether it's bow hunting or deer hunting, is like, think about that and cross at a point where you're still going to be able to get a shot.
Vortex Optics has sponsored the podcast. I have been a user of Vortex my entire bow hunting career. I've used their Diamondback 10x42 binoculars. I've used their laser rangefinder. And when I went out to North Dakota, I used a spotting scope out there, one of their angled spotting scopes to spot game far away. And Vortex is just a great company. I've obviously gotten to know them at Huntstock over the past few years. And they've got great customer service, an awesome warranty program, and really good optics that don't break the bank. So if you guys are in need of any binoculars, scopes, they've got, red dots and other optics for rifles and gun hunting, or, binos, rangefinders, spotting scopes, tripods. You cannot go wrong with Vortex. So visit www.vortexoptics.com.
I was in my saddle the first buck I killed this year. I tried to do a beeline to the tree, and when he was coming in, he was with a young spike. He was kind of bullying him around, and the spike was oblivious, and the spike took a perfect trail. So I kind of knew where I wanted to stop this buck. Little did I know, from up above you can make out trails, but you don't know where they all are. And he comes in and he catches my scent on the bushes that I had to brush up against because that's where I crossed the creek on that horseshoe.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes in, he's about to come underneath me, which as a bow hunter, you're like, I don't want you too close.
Yeah.
So he hits my scent, and he actually backtracks, and he, and that creek is going north and south. He goes like 2 deer trails north, and then decides to follow that spike.
Yeah.
He was gonna come underneath me, which which I kind of want. I chose
It's better
the
than 2
stand.
trails away. Yeah.
Yeah. So he go. Well, the 2 trails away actually ended up giving me like an 18-yard shot, which was better
gee,
than
okay.
4
I was
yards.
picturing he was doing like a 60-yard loop.
No,
Yeah.
he was gonna come 4 yards underneath me, and then he smelt. You can tell when they kind of hit something, and then they aren't too worried because again, people walk their dogs and do all that. But he backed up and he went, and where creek crossings are, as you can imagine, there's crossings every 20 yards or so. But this horseshoe was just, Grand Central Station. They cut left and right on it. North, south, east, west is like a little peninsula of land that they like to hang out on. Anyways, he comes across and I end up shooting him. But the reason why he chose the trail he did, because he wanted to come my way, was he smelt me, and being able to shoot where they can smell you. Now he was in the brush, but he was in bow range. I just didn't have a clear shot.
Yep.
But walking through to your stand, an opportunity to shoot, like you said, is actually a pretty good plan. Thinking about it now, if you have to rabbit hole through underbrush and come through, deer like to be in there. If they get behind you or they get somewhere where you think your access is sneaky because it's not on a deer trail. I don't like walking deer trails. I go back and forth. Stuff isn't touching the sides of my clothes where I think a lot of like at their head level.
Mm-hmm.
I can keep my hips off the brush.
Yep.
But my boot is on the ground on their deer trail.
Yep.
But if I go off the deer trail, I feel like you start brushing up against more stuff and might leave more scent.
That's true.
I'm actually, more apt to walk on the deer trail, keep it very straight lined. Obviously, if I see a creek and some water, I'll put my knee boots in there and scrub everything off my boots I can in the water and keep walking. But walking the deer trails to the stand is actually not something I fear as much anymore as opposed to bushwhacking to a stand, because their nose level is right there where your hips are getting brushed up against stuff.
Yeah. And another thing that I like to do, if like all throughout the rut, I'm out of it now, but I put if I know that I'm walking crossing deer trails and stuff, or I want a deer to stop he's gonna smell my scent anyway. I just put dough and heat on the bottom of my boots.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But sometimes you'll have a buck following your boot trail all the way in if you had dough and heat on it. It doesn't always work, but I think if you're worried about that, that's not going to hurt. It's a more powerful smell than your boot scent, and they'll smell you too, but it might give them reason to pause there. But that's why I always make sure that where the most heavily trafficked area that I'm seeing deer move through from cameras and observation, any of those that I have to cross, I don't want to cross them. Like this stand that I'm hunting, where I had it set up for bow, the lower trail is like 25 yards and the higher one where they cross is 50. And then there's another one, the draw that I walk down to my stand. I'm giving up two highly traveled places to get down to there.
Yeah.
I should move that stand for gun all the way up to the top of the draw.
Cut one of those off.
And cut them all off. Just come straight down from the trail. I'll have that short bushwhacking and have my stand there, because then I can shoot straight down 10 yards into that high trail, and I can reach with the muzzleloader 70 yards down to the lower trail. Yeah. I just it's been so cold I haven't been breaking down my saddle. I'm like, I don't know, I'll just leave it there.
I got a question for you. You run a lot of cameras, you see a lot of scrapes. You mentioned scent. Something we would do in Illinois, you got different pieces of property. You ever take dirt from a scrape and bring it to a different scrape across town or something?
No.
Ever heard of that?
No, never heard of that.
We killed a buck in Illinois.
It makes sense
off
though.
One farm. We cut the hawk off, just stinky, hairy, piss-covered hawk. I dragged it in to a stand, a different farm, different piece of land. It was nuts before the sun even rose, and I got lucky. I'm sure there was a rut parade or something, but when they came through, 4 or 5 bucks all locked up and started snort wheezing.
They smelled foreign buck.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that confirmed with me, but also old time hunters that, I've crossed paths with, they'll get, latex glove or nitrile gloves, a little garden trowel, and a Ziploc bag, and they'll scoop up
Yep.
wet dirt off a scrape, bring it to another hunting property. You put it in there, apparently, and it makes total sense.
It does.
It could really fire up some bucks in your area and give you an opportunity to sit on that scrape with a little more confidence, sit on that scrape a little longer or back-to-back days. You put it in an evening hunt, you might want to be back there in the morning.
It makes total sense, and that sounds awesome. The one thing, so you did you see Backyard Sense at Huntstock last year? Do you know Backyard Sense at all?
Yes.
What
Are
he does?
you about to say that it turns to ammonia after a certain amount of time?
He does that
Okay.
but in a spray bottle form, so you don't actually have to pick up. What he does is and I don't know how he doesn't tell anybody the formula, but he'll put 4 or 5 different bucks interdigital scent glands
From their
hooves in one bottle,
Yeah.
into a spray bottle. And so you can go to a scrape and just spray that, and you're doing the same thing effectively as grabbing wet dirt from another scrape and bringing it into a foreign one.
Yeah.
You're just spraying 5 bucks scents there. So
Yeah.
he must collect hooves from deer and figure out how to extract the scent and all that. But his scent works exactly like that. That's the reason he does it. He does the same thing with the orbital scent for spraying on licking branches.
He sent me some last year.
So you can do that same have that
those.
same exact effect without doing all that scooping work.
Did you
Much
know?
easier.
Same thing with the interdigital glands there. You know when does stomp at you?
They're releasing a stress pheromone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why they need to die on the spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was something that I love that stuff. Just figuring all that out, and what she's got to be really worked up to do that, and what does that mean for you as a hunter?
Well, I observed this year too. From the spot I'm going tomorrow, I see a lot of deer in that spot, so I get a lot of great little observations.
Yeah.
But I had one day where my wind was blowing the wrong way. It was supposed to be going this way, and I get there and it was blowing that way. And these does come through in the morning, and the wind's going that way, and they start stomping. They know something's up. They never see me because I stay.
They
so
never do.
still.
They just do what does do and just make it rugged.
And so all 3 of those does got pretty worked up there, and they took off blowing eventually. Never seeing me, but took off blowing eventually. And then later that day, I see a buck coming in, and he stops right where they were stomping, and he smells, and you can see his whole demeanor changes. He was like, "Oh, there were stressed deer here earlier."
Yeah.
And he takes off the same way that he smelled their stressed deer scent going, because he knows they're running away from danger.
Yeah.
That's what he does. So I mean,
how cool is that?
It's cool to see stuff like that.
Should have moved your stand right in that kill zone.
I can't. I'm in one of those spots. I can't go any further that way.
Yeah.
So
you hunt with a muzzleloader. I hunted with a muzzleloader. Last year, I took a shot and it felt good. It ended up hitting the deer in the waist. And shit happens. Tracked it, ended up getting it, but I had to do my gridding circles and finding pin drops, and over the years, I had a lot of archery experience with clients, myself, and just talking with guides and hunters. We love our broadhead blood trails, but as a muzzleloader hunter, I was talking to a friend of mine just the other day. We know that blood trailing with guns, especially muzzleloaders, how slow they can be. They do devastating carnage, but they can leave minimal blood trails.
Uh-huh.
So last year, I hit one in the waist. I'm not really counting that as a vital hit.
When you say waist, what do you mean?
Like his back,
his hip?
Yeah, like back there. Because I don't know if I deflected off of some brush. There were, whatever happened. This year, I shot and I hit my buck high double lung. He ended up expiring like 45 yards away, but it took me 25 minutes to find him because he died between some rocks and he left no blood. So I was talking to my buddy, and he has a lot of experience. He's like, dude, I've lived that. It's stressful. The smoke comes out. You can't really see their body language after the shot. The best you can hope for is they run left or right, and you can catch an idea if their tail is up, their tail is down, how they're running, if you see any blood on their side, whatever. He said he likes to hammer them right in the shoulder. It'll anchor them. You might go through the shoulder. You might kill them. I'm not advocating for like knock them down and then try to reload and kill them. But, where do you aim with a muzzleloader, and what is your ideal shot placement with a muzzleloader? Given that, you want to kill this deer, but what if, there's land that you can't pursue them on, or there's a swamp, and there might not be a blood trail that's ideal.
Yeah, I just don't overthink that. I aim the same place I do with a rifle, just right behind the shoulder in the crease.
Yeah.
And most of them die right away. The only one I didn't was last year when I shot that big 10-pointer in the neck, and I thought he was dead, and I messed up that whole reload.
You shocked him. He went down.
Shocked him. But every other deer that I've shot with the muzzleloader, they've died, and I just shoot right behind the shoulder. Like that one I watched this year. I think I killed my buck the same day you did. Was it the opening day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Opening day of gun. I watched him die. He only went like 30 yards, but I also looked to see if there was blood, and there was a lot of blood in that trail.
Okay.
I don't know what that was, but
maybe
it was
different.
His heart was obliterated.
Yeah.
I got along. He was a little bit quartering away.
So, granted, my two recent shots, waist not good. Second one, high lung, high in the body cavity. He's not draining.
Yeah.
Like literally, I didn't miss by much, or I didn't hit him by much. It was the top of the rib cage, but both lungs were smoked. And
were you in a stand?
Ground blind.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I got him through there, but at that position in his rib cage, again, you want the lower third for blood trails, because that's where everything drains out. And I don't know if I'll aim at the shoulder again, but I have seen muzzleloaders do good blood, heart obviously pumping, and lower third of the body. But just again, with muzzleloader hunters, we always got to be just taking every piece of information in after the shot with the smoke, and not having a follow up.
Yeah, this one was lucky. I could see him fall, so I knew where he was. He had another buck with him too. He was in this area. The younger bucks, and he was a 2.5-year-old. They started bacheloring up again that week, a few days before that. But I didn't even see that other buck. He was running, and he got pushed by something. They were kind of at the end of their fast run. They were slowing down a little bit.
Oh, I like that.
But he was trotting through, and I stopped him. He stopped behind a tree, stepped out. He stopped behind a tree for like 20 seconds, of course, when I stopped him. It was just all I could see was his ass. And I was like, damn it, step out. I didn't know what he was going to do when he finally started moving again. But he instead of trotting or running out from there, he just walked. And he stepped out, and I stopped him again real quick and shot, and he was gone. It was only then that I saw that there's another buck like 10 yards behind him.
Where do you stand on the situation? You ever had a deer peel away from you as soon as you did it? They all stopped for you?
Yep, so far. When I've done that, they've all stopped.
I guess
you could say anything though. You don't have to say Matt.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Why does everybody say that? But you could literally like have your own signature.
Well, yes. I mean,
turtles.
Being around hunters for 3 months straight in Illinois for 6 years, it was like you heard some horror stories. Yeah. You heard some bucks coming out of their skin as soon as they heard that. Probably have been shot at before. Mature bucks. Just a lot of tree stand hunters out there. You've heard guys trying to whistle at bucks and them not responding.
Yeah.
So the head guide is from Vermont.
That's cool.
He's he's the man. He taught me everything, and he comes from, probably your neck of the woods, and told us a lot about what Vermont has to offer with deer and why he continues to go out to Illinois. But he taught us. He was like, boys, when it's your turn to hunt, it's going to be December. It was right about this time. We would hunt after second gun. He's like, if they're out past 35 yards and you need to stop them, do what you have to do. If they're inside 35, past 20 to 35, he's like, let them stop naturally. He goes,
they've heard tons of mants.
Yes. they've this year is fresh in their mind. He goes, I don't want you, ruining a chance and blowing a buck out. And then he said, if they're 20 yards and in, boys, you better be hitting that foam with your bows from October 1st to Thanksgiving, because I want you to be able to hit a deer on a slow walk with your bow. And that was pretty valuable. I mean, I think shooting a deer on a slow walk should be in every hunter's quiver or skill set, because inside 20 yards, you hit them with a mat, they might snap their neck right at you. That's pretty close. And I think being able to hit them on the walk is probably the best case of anchoring one down. As soon as you hit that mat, you just change the entire complexity of now your heart's pumping. Now you feel like you got to rush the shot. If you can slowly, again, they're not running, whatever. They're just doing their deer thing. Maybe they got their head down feeding. Maybe they're just on a deer run. But if you're confident enough and you've been practicing, you should be able to slowly swing and move with the deer, lead them just by a couple hairs, and punch that trigger at your time. Because I've had buck fever and I've met them, and it's not the deer that runs away. It's my own. It's my own doing that screws up, and I've missed. I've wounded. I've missed. It's true. So I didn't know where you stood on that, and if it's something that you have thought that deep in, or if it's like, no, I'm gonna stop them, and then I'm gonna count to 2 and let it fly.
I haven't thought too much about it. I've never shot at one walking yet, but that's not to say that if that big 8-pointer that I've been after this year, that's given me the slip a few times, I've seen him a couple of times. If I think I might have thought about it with him if he was like right under me in this particular spot, because he was very skittish. He got my wind scent one time and took the frick. I started thinking like, well, with him, I can just tell he's very, very alert and skittish with shit. He was super smart. Might be risky if he was real close to me to do that. So I think I probably thought about it with him this year, but it's just never happened to me yet, and I don't know what would happen. You never know what's going to happen until just right then.
Oh,
and then
I know.
You just make a decision, and you either live with it, it's a shitty one or not. Like that one I was telling you earlier, that 9-pointer, when I walked up on him, and he was about to step into that 30-yard range. After that whole situation ended, I just was thinking to myself, what could I have done better? Maybe I shouldn't have got up as soon as he turned around and started walking away from me. Maybe I shouldn't have got up, went full draw, and started walking after him, because that was a risky move, and that's what ended up screwing me. Maybe instead, with the high wind, when he turned, I should have pulled out the grunt and given a couple grunts, and maybe it would have got him to come back out. Maybe it would have got him to come up the hill closer to me, and that would have been a higher odds than me going to do that. But in the moment, you make your decision and it just happens, right? It's like I just stood up instinctively and just knew. I was like, all right, well, let me just try to keep this 30-yard buffer. I'd never done that before, but in that moment, it was so fast happening. I'm like, that makes sense in my head. I know he was about to be 30 there. As long as I can keep pace with how he's walking away from me, maybe I'll get a shot. And it could have turned out like this one did. That was the ground buck.
Yeah.
It could have been another deer down on the ground because of that decision. It just didn't happen that day.
Yeah. So thinking about getting your shot off, my archery buck this year, I was in a tree saddle. Before you hung up your coat, I saw your platform. I knew which way he was going to be. So I'm facing the tree and he's out in front of me, and I knew he's going to come this way. I'm a righty. I actually got up on my platform, put my back to the tree, and I shot him like standing out of a tree stand.
Yeah.
I didn't want to risk messing around twisting the
But you saw him
saddle.
coming from a long ways away, and you're able to make that move. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever done that, or do you have a position you can twist to your right hand side with your saddle?
Oh, I have done that, but I haven't gotten a shot off at a deer doing that.
Which one? The twist or standing?
No, standing with my back against the tree.
I think that was I think that's a killer idea for saddle hunters, having the opportunity to be able to do that if your platform's big enough.
Yeah. That's a big platform, and I haven't hunted out of that one very much. That's why it's hanging there.
Is that the tethered Predator XL or something?
That is a trophy line, one of the big trophy line platforms.
That thing was sweet.
It's big, and I would like to get that into a tree because I'm hunting on a real small one right now. But that also happened to me when I was in a climber one time, where I knew I had a cell camera trigger. This is like 4 years ago now. It was a giant 9-point. It was like a 155-inch 9 that I was trying to kill that year. And I'm facing this way in my climber, and that cell camera that triggered was this way, 250 yards. And he was coming out of a swamp. And I was like, nice. Oh, so I know he's there. So what I should have done, and I was an idiot that time, is turn around and sit on the bar of the climber and just be facing that way. I know he's that way, and he was kind of coming this way, but I did that, but I only did that for like 20 minutes, and I got cold, and it was a little uncomfortable. I was like, I'll hear him come in. It was pretty crunchy, so I was like, I'm gonna sit back down, warm my hands up. I sat down, and it was like 5 minutes later, I heard a twig snap back there. I was like, I looked over, and there was a little young doe coming in, and I look behind her, and there's the freaking big 9, and they're only like 25 to 30 yards away at that point. When I looked like that doe saw my head go like that around the tree, so she was locked onto me, and I could just see she was just locked onto me, and that buck immediately knew too. He's like, oh, she sees something's up. He never took a step closer. And I couldn't get up and move. So it was only once she took off back towards that swamp, and he did, that I was able to get up and turn around. But I should have, in hindsight, it's like, dude, who cares if you're a little bit cold? That buck's going to be coming from that way. Stay in that position on that bar the entire time. Like, I'll never make that mistake again, but it's the same thing with, like, the platform.
I mean, I know your stuff's set up on your tree, but, like, could have you just got back in your climber and, like, wiggled around the tree to give yourself a...
Totally, yeah. You can do that. I've done that a couple of times, but this day it was really quiet. It was, like, still and crunchy. Yeah, I didn't want to make any noise, but...
especially when something's that, coming your way, you could, that would be a mistake, too, but... getting deer on your offhand side is a game in and of itself. Yeah.
Well, I had kind of a mistake the other day when I was in my saddle too, where when I'm in the saddle, I have my bow hanging on the left, right? So I can take it and go left. And same thing as where I had my gun when I went there for it was opening morning gun. The same day I shot my deer. I had my gun there, and that's fine if the deer comes on that low trail. That works good. But the one deer I saw that morning before I got out of my saddle was a buck that used that high trail. He was kind of trotting through. He came and he stopped exactly on that spot where I crossed, where I would wanted a deer to do that. He was trotting, and he had a dead, like, it was like backed up a little bit, smelled. But before he got to that spot, I grabbed my gun from over here, and I had to go in front of the tree, and I hit a little dead pine, and it just broke a dead pine branch, and he stopped for a second and looked down that way. And then he kept going, and then he stopped that second time right in my scent where I crossed there, and I got the gun on him, and he was an 8-pointer. He was 2.5-year-old. He probably had a bigger rack than the one I shot later that day, but I decided to pass him. I didn't know that deer at all, and just in that moment, I was like, "No, I don't want that one. I want the big 8." And later that day, though, when I decided to get down at, I don't know, it was 11 o'clock. I was like, "Well, go check some cameras, do some still hunting again," and I sat down. I don't think I told this on the podcast yet, but I sat down. I got to a camera I hadn't checked for a long time. There were 200 videos on it or something like that. And so I put it in my phone to load them all up. And that takes, 10 minutes maybe sometimes. It depends on the camera. Sometimes it's super fast. Some cards for some reason take a long time. This is one of those that just was taking a long time. So I was like, all right, well, while I'm doing that, I'll find a nice place to sit on a log. I'll packed snacks that day. Normally I don't eat anything in the woods, but I packed snacks and a sandwich. And I was like, while it's loading, I found a nice log 40 yards away from the camera, go down and sit on that, take my first bite of cheese. And I'm thinking to myself, I've never killed a deer or even seen a buck while sitting down and having lunch. I know a lot of people do that. You always hear stories. It's a good time, take a break, something walks by. And as soon as I took that bite and that thought was going through my mind, as soon as I stopped that thought, I heard chick, 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 and I looked up and that was this buck coming down. And I knew he wasn't a giant buck, but I had just had that thought and I was just thinking, man, I love shooting deer on the ground. And yeah, this buck was meant for me. So I made the decision, I'm going to shoot him. And so then I told you what happened after that. But it was like, as soon as I thought about that, here he came. It like just manifested in front of me.
Yeah, dude. I mean,
I was like, I got to shoot him.
Great buck. You gotta give yourself more credit. It doesn't matter. Archery buck I shot was a young buck, but I hadn't killed one out of my saddle yet. I've killed them out of all my tree stands, and I really wanted to shoot one on a Saturday morning out of my saddle, bring it back. I think my wife was going on vacation for like 4 days, November 14, 15, 16, I think 17 was like the Sunday or something. I'm sorry, I shot him on a Wednesday. I took the day off. And I was just like, it didn't matter what size it was.
No.
I knew I was obviously wanting a big buck. But,
I like killing bucks. I like holding out. I passed 30 deer this year. But
my
it is about
trigger
me.
finger. My trigger finger was getting itchy, but again, it was all about the scenario. It was a beautiful morning.
Yep.
I just really wanted to, basically anchor that morning in, my deer journal of, taking one. And I knew my wife was going away. I was going to be on dad duty. So getting one that morning was special. And even if it was a doe, but it was a young buck. And that one I'll remember too, because I was rewarded with a nice buck during muzzleloader or deer opening day of deer. Well, I don't know did I tell you? So I set up that ground blind before gun season, and what we would do for clients out in Illinois is like, man, it's gun season, it's not the rut, but we really want you to sit all day because I don't want to drive you to the farm, pick you up at lunch, bring you back at lunch, go get you at, dark. So by the end of November, middle and end November gun season, they've been hunted. They aren't running around, but you want your clients to stay all day because it gives them the best chance to kill a deer, a deer of a lifetime because they're up. But if it was cold, we'd put Mr. Buddy heaters in the blinds. And be like, hey buddy, I got you a Mr. Buddy heater. You got lunch, you need anything? So I had got a Mr. Buddy heater last year, and I strapped it to my backpack and I brought 2 canisters.
On opening day?
No, I brought 1 canister. I was thinking about bringing a second, but I was Googling. It was so cold that morning.
It was cold.
I was Googling how long a 1 pound canister lasts on a Mr. Buddy heater on low and high. And I was like, this is great. I'm texting my buddies some pictures of like, I'm nice and warm in here. I haven't seen a deer, but it doesn't matter. I'm just, I'm having some coffee. I'm just hanging. And again, I shot the little buck, but I got rewarded with a big buck at 10:07 opening day. And I don't know, man, if that 1 pound canister had run out, my mind definitely would have been thinking there's a hot shower and a bowl of soup waiting for me at home. Maybe I'll come back out early in the afternoon, but I don't think I've ever regretted getting up early to go deer or duck hunting
Oh, no.
once I'm out there.
No.
So, if just that little preparation and thinking of like how to make yourself more comfortable, I'm in I'm in no place to try to prove to anybody how tough I am. I went for the full ground blind, heater, everything, and I'll probably do it again.
Well, it worked, and you were super comfy, man. That was one of the reasons I got down, too. That day was so cold.
Yeah.
I'd been in that saddle. My feet get really cold in saddles.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh, man, it's freezing. I got a gun in my hand. I like being on the ground. Let's
Yeah.
go move around, man. And it just works out.
The head guide at Illinois also said he thinks that all the heat from the buddy heater in a ground blind
Brings your scent high.
takes it straight up.
That's
So
it might, yeah.
if it's not very windy and it's you hate bow hunters hate 1-2 mile an hour winds because the wind just goes everywhere. So if you can get in a ground blind and just let your heat maybe like get up fast, get out, because it's hot and not just like your body heat that maybe rises with the thermals a little bit and whatever. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I like the idea of knowing that
I like that.
just the heat coming out of the windows just gets drafted way up out of the sky, and maybe, everything around you is a little bit more virgin.
Yeah, I like that. A couple of things, and then we'll probably wrap this up in like 10 minutes here.
Yep.
A couple of things that you were talking about that made me think of something. The access point that we started off the podcast really talking about. One other blessing about me shooting that 2.5-year-old buck was where he ended up dying was like maybe 750, 800 feet from the edge of some houses. And these were some houses that I've always wanted to go ask permission to be able to access this big woods.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I kind of get nervous to go into, I don't like knocking on someone's door and asking for permission to hunt. It's just, I get flustered with that. Even though I'm in sales, I don't like,
You feel like you should do it on a nice summer day and not like in your hunting clothes.
Yeah. And I never get around to it in the summer, but I should.
Yeah.
But this deer, the way I could drag him out was through this gas pipeline from there. But this gas pipeline goes right through someone's yard, and it's on Onyx. It's on their property. I don't think there's any right of way to be able to just drag it out of there. So my other option was to drag it to where I park, because my parking and my access where I park now, it's not terrible to get in there to hunt, but getting a deer out of there sucks. But this guy is the primo property to be able to park and go down that gas line to get me into some of my favorite places to hunt there. I just never got around to asking him, because I was hunting a giant deer over there like 4 years ago. And that's when I really started looking. I was like, man, I'd love to get access here. I did have access on one property. That family ended up getting a divorce, I think, and I just lost access there. So I had access off of that street for one season only. And then after that, I was like, I got to figure out how to get in here again, because it's a pain where I get in now. So anyway, I was like, all right, this is going to be a probably 5-hour drag if I had to drag it back to my truck by myself. And, that's kind of typical sometimes in Vermont and stuff. You get really long drags, but down here, you're just not as used to it. And usually I have help. This day I didn't have any help. And I was like, all right, I'm going all the way back to my truck. I'm going to get in the truck. I'm going to drive over to that guy's property and see if he's home. And hopefully he is, and I can get permission. And it's so much easier, I feel like, after you have a deer down, too.
Yeah, you're riding high, you're confident, and
yeah, and for them, they're just like, oh, yeah,
congrats,
you killed a deer. Yeah. Like, it's a nice, easy opening. It's like, yeah, dude, it would help me a lot. It would save me hours. And
right.
So that this guy gave me permission. It was pretty. I knocked on the door. He came out, and I'm in all my orange and shit. And I was like, "Hey, dude. I shot a deer back down here. Off of that gas line. And I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind if I dragged it up through the gas line. Through your property here across the yard. It would save me a lot." He goes, how would you, like, what do you mean? How would you drag it? And I'm like, oh, I got like a jet sled, I won't leave any blood or anything. It's just, I'll just Just
Yeah.
pull literally up through the gas line. It won't do any damage or anything. He's like, yeah, that's no problem. And I got to talking to him. I asked him if he ever had deer meat. He started asking me questions first. He's like, what'd you get? Like, and he was getting kind of curious. And anyway, he ended up being a great connection. And after I brought it up, it was still a bitch to get it up with that too, because it was like straight uphill gas line. But it was so much easier. And I knocked on the door before I left, asked if he wanted to come see it. He came out, saw it, asked all these questions. He showed me a picture of that giant that I was hunting 4 years ago. He's like, look at this thing. He goes, he came right up to my pool a few years ago. It's like, it was the biggest deer I've ever seen. I'm like, yep, that's the buck I was in here hunting. And that buck's still alive, by the way. I figured that out.
Jeez.
He's on his way. He's way downhill. He's an 8-pointer now, and he's smaller, but I can tell it's him because he had a big slit in his ear.
Oof. Holyfield.
But yeah, that was a blessing, because now I'm going to bring him some meat. I asked him if he eats deer meat. He's like, I've had it, but I don't have any. I'm like, well, I'll give you some of this one for helping me, letting me drag it out.
Very nice.
Seriously? And that's great access. And I'm super excited for next year. I won't ask him this year, but I know I'll be able to get it. Just from that interaction with them.
Yeah. I owe a handful of people some deer meat.
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm going to bring them just like, one package of steak, and we'll just keep that relationship going. And then the other thing, like this has happened twice this season, has happened before too, but when I'm checking cameras, I think this is important. If you want to go out and check your non-cell cams, typically if you know what you're doing and you're actually a good scouter, those cameras are going to be in good places where it's very likely that deer, that's the 10% that Hal talks about, right? You put your cameras there. So still hunting your way to those cameras, and if you're physically pulling a card and uploading it into your phone, I always try to get away from my camera a little bit and get into some cover, like I did that day. Got down and sat in between some logs, because you just never know. And a week before that happened, I was doing the same thing. Got down from my stand. I'm going to go do this big loop and check some cameras. And I went down and checked one of my cameras that I know was very active. The first time I checked it, I was like, oh, this is a nice spot. Because it was the first time I put it in that area, along a swamp edge, right on a scrape. The first time I checked it, there was a buck, at least one buck in daylight every single day on that scrape. And sometimes two or three were going by there. So I got down to check it the second time after I already had that intel. I'm like, this is a popular swamp edge. While I'm checking it, I'm backing into the swamp a little bit. I got into the swamp, put it in my phone to check it, and then I was sitting next to this tree on this little hump in the swamp where I could shoot out into that scrape, but there was like a little sapling.
Did you have your bow?
Yeah, it was during bow season still. Had a little sapling in front of me, so I was like, I took a few steps, cracked that sapling over, and there was a buck like 30 yards coming down that right to that scrape, coming down the edge, and I just saw him bounding away when I cracked that. Like, he was right there. But I think that's important, because it's happened to me twice this year within a week. It was like this in the same week that happened. Like, find cover while you're uploading your shit, because that camera's in a destination spot for deer. So
be situational aware when you're out there doing
you never know what's gonna happen.
Homework. And yeah, I wish there was like I don't know. I wish you could go like you should go check your cards at night, so you can. I know the deer are on your cameras at night, but like checking them so that you don't have to always worry about that. You could,
but it's nice worrying about it when you have a weapon.
You have a weapon, but
yeah.
No, just the temptation of always having that like thought of them watching you and whatnot. But no, I'm not checking my cards at night. I don't have any cell.
Some people do that though.
I know in Illinois we used to go set stands up in the woods at night.
Yeah.
When all the deer are in the fields.
Yeah.
So if you had some interior cameras and you were really serious about just your impact, just slip in there at night, get the cards.
You know what I always thought would be fun is shed hunting at night. It would be a lot harder to do it, but if you go out at night with super light up flashlight or
Yeah.
a really powerful spotlight or
See
something,
if they
and
shine off.
go into the woods at night.
glow.
Nobody else is shed hunting at night, and it would just be kind of
It's not illegal.
it'd be a fun content thing to do. Right? Wouldn't that be fun? Just like, yeah, let's just go have a night shed party. Who can find their first shed at night?
I know where I'd go.
Well, maybe we should line it up for this year. We should definitely do a shed hunt or two together. Anyway.
Yeah, we got to cover some ground. I got to get out.
Get on our quiet
My
cats.
my dog doesn't go for sheds, but he definitely deserves a good shed hunt to stretch the legs. So we got duck season starts Tuesday, so I know you're looking for another buck tag, but we got to get out and maybe do a duck hunt.
I've never done that.
If you just want to sit and observe, and maybe if you got a shotgun you want to shoot, but
Well,
that's pretty special this time of year too. In Mass has some good ducks. Don't sleep on the ducks here.
I have a feeling tomorrow. I have a good feeling. I think I'm gonna with the doe activity, the road activity that's happened in there. I've never hunted this particular spot with a gun before, but I can reach to a lot of places. I think I have a good opportunity tomorrow to fill a buck tag, hopefully. But I am going to be picky. Just need one of like 4 or 5 deer in there. Well, 4 now because you killed one of them.
I didn't mean to.
One of the
he
4
tripped
good
and
ones
fell
in
in
there.
front of my bullet. No, that's so nice of you to send me those videos of him.
Oh, I have a lot more too. I got to send you more.
Because he's a dandy on camera.
I'm telling you, he's a dandy in real life too.
Yeah, I'm still just sort of absorbing.
Have you ever scored a deer?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Did you score this one at all?
No, not yet.
I would love to at least see what that.
Yeah, we'll
is,
score them together.
These
we'll
deer
get
are all
and
125 to 127, and I'm pretty sure that one will be very close to that. I wouldn't be surprised if he was one in the low 130s, but I haven't seen him in person. He's got really nice brow tines.
He's broke off in a few spots.
Oh, he's broke. Yeah,
his beam and one of his tines. But to me,
pretty wide too.
Yeah, he's wide. Yeah, scoring bucks. That's one of the reasons I feel like I got earlier in the talk here. I got burnt out. The Illinois thing, it was all about that, and I felt like I needed to attach something more to a deer than age and score. And I think I covered it about 10 minutes ago. It's like you did perfectly. You wanted to kill one during lunch.
Yeah.
From the ground.
Exactly.
And you cemented that in your history.
Yeah.
And I wanted to cement my first saddle kill. And, I just picked a really good spot, and I just wanted to attach something more to my deer hunting than looking for, inches in age.
Yep.
Obviously those things go a long way with other hunters. I've always thought that inches were really important to hunter lingo, because when you're describing a deer to me, you said earlier, a 155.9.
Yeah.
For somebody who can really paint that picture, I can really paint that picture.
It's like that buck almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think it's more important about talking about them, telling stories, than holding your deer up and making it about the inches. I just love talking to my hunting buddies and being like, yeah, man, there's a really nice 140, 8 point, 10 point, or there's just, in Illinois, if it wasn't 160, we weren't that excited about it.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
Obviously you were like, yeah, he's got to go 170, he's got to go 180, and it was a lot easier to just get past the deer and just move on with, all right, I described him, I told you what caliber he is, what I think his age is, and now we're trying to figure him out. Obviously characteristics and everything go a long way too, but I just really like how hunters can quickly tell each other about, what they think the buck is, and it paints a picture in the other guy's mind.
Yeah, it's about the moment, man. Like you said, if it's a unique moment, if it feels right, it's about that moment. And all of the times I've shot like a nice mature deer, I've been in the moment where I'm waiting for a mature deer. I'm by myself, I'm waiting for one. That smaller 8-pointer that I showed you there on the right, that was his hides on this deer. When that one came in, I don't know, he's probably like 110 or 113 inches or something. I don't remember what he ended up being. That to me it's a deer that I would most likely pass if I was just in there hunting by myself and I know I have the whole season to go.
Yeah.
But my dad and my uncle were down here from
Boom.
Vermont
Yeah.
that taught me hunting. I have all the tradition with and hunting. It was my uncle's first time here. My dad had only come down a couple of times, and they were in the same patch of woods with me that day too.
Yeah.
And as soon as that deer came out, I'm like, oh, I'm shooting it.
It's okay going out empty-handed,
Yeah.
but it's even better if you go out with something just to, again, cement that memory.
Yep.
With knocking one down.
Yeah, and them being there for the celebration that night and helping drag and all of that stuff. And then Pat Burns, my partner hunt stock and my good friend, he's a big buck killer. But after he killed the electric buck, that buck he chased for 6 years, he doesn't have the desire or the need to, like, I have to shoot big deer. This year he shot a little 5-pointer on a drive with Brandon Ashford, and he was pumped about it. It's like, you have to. He was like, it's so fun to go on
Give
these
yourself
drives.
some
He's like,
slack.
he's like, you should just meet us for a drive one of these times. And I was trying to make it happen. I wasn't able to do it yet, but it sounds fun. Like when there's the way they're strategizing their drives, they're putting game plans together. They both got deer that day, him and Brandon. They had like 4 or 5 guys in their drive group, and Brandon shot a monster in the drive, and Pat shot that 5-pointer, and he was proud about it. And it's all about, like, he's like, like, what do I care? And he's told me multiple times this year, he's like, I could go out and kill Lucky, this buck he's been after for a long time. He's like, I could probably go kill him very easily with the gun. He goes, but he's like, I'd rather shoot him with a bow. And I really want to get his sheds this year. It's not, if he just wanted to kill the big deer, he could have killed that buck with his gun.
Yeah.
Just the way he has them kind of pinned down. But it's a different, you want to kill each deer in the way that you envision it happening. Doesn't want to do that with the gun.
Yeah.
He wants it to be done with the bow.
Well said. Yeah. It's you envision it, and when you make it happen that way, there's just nothing better. I think it shouldn't take away the fact that, if you do see your big target buck while you have a gun, because you're out there, because it is gun season.
Oh, I'm doing it.
Of course. But you envision getting them all season with the bow. But it quickly dissipates because you got them, and it's about who you're with, and the chapter's closed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dude, thanks for coming. It goes by fast, doesn't it? It's already been pretty much 2-hour podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to be up in 5 hours to go hunting, and
I'll be helping you drag out. And
are you doing anything tomorrow?
No, I'll be around. I won't be in the afternoon, but you're hunting till noon, so I'll be around.
Cool. Yeah, I think you know the area anyway, so I'll if something happens.
You can blindfold me. I don't
something
care.
happens, I'll hit you up. All right, dude. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
Yep, we'll do it again.